Mix It with Mike plugin of the week comes from the Plugin Alliance. It's the BX Console AMEK 200. This is putting together two previously released plugins, one the AMEK 200 EQ and the AMEK Mastering Compressor. Essentially, the George Massenburg Labs 8200 and 8900, I believe, is the compressor unit into a channel strip plugin. It borrows a few things from the 9098 AMEK, which was actually an AMEK console. None of this is AMEK, but they have the name. And they put it into a channel strip, and it's actually quite cool. Now, there are plenty of channel strips out there. This would be a very expensive one. Obviously, if you have the two individual plugins, you could put it across, on individual tracks, although that might be a bit more processor intensive. It's not exactly the same. The EQ is pretty much gives you everything that you get on the main unit. And the compressor is a slightly stripped down or modified version of the 8900. So you're not getting the full AMEK mastering compressor version on here, and we'll kind of go through that. In its basic form, though, let's start at the top. We have a high pass, low pass filter right up in the top here. The bands can be turned off individually, and they have a pretty broad spectrum, 30K down to 20 hertz and 20 hertz up to 20K. So that's pretty much all that you need, I think. In would be input. That would be the first thing that you see. Otherwise, it would be post or after the input gain right here. Post would stick it at some point later after the EQ, right? So under normal signal flow, by default, it would go here into the gate expander section, through the compressor limiter section, not the VCA clip, the EQ, then the VCA clip. And so this would insert it after the EQ, but before the VCA clip, which is always last. All right, so that's the basics there. No other things there. You could also feed it into the side chain for the dynamics. Gate expander module here. This is borrowed from the 9098 or 9099 channel strip AMEK. So you're getting there because the Massenburg Labs doesn't have a gate, not that I know of anyway. Maybe they have something hidden somewhere. But all the typical stuff that you expect. You can work in gate or expander mode. You can invert it, which works like a ducking kind of feature. So it'll be like listening to everything that you're getting rid of instead of that, which is basically ducking. Fast, medium, slow attack. You get your release time. There's a way to change the curve to a linear curve. I think it's some kind of a logarithmic curve, or it's something along the lines where I think what it does is it starts to decay initially faster and then slows down. Something that's not talked about often with the release characteristics is the shape of the release characteristic, just assuming that it's linear, and that's not the case most of the time, especially with vintage components. The separate sidechain filters that are over here, and you have a listen button there, so you could drop that in to really kind of focus in with a little high Q thing there, just to get a little resonance to maybe make your triggering a bit more accurate while getting rid of other stuff. And then we have the compressor section. Now this is where we kind of dig into it a little bit because, and this will sort of throw some people off because the mindset around this is a bit different from like a normal compressor. Like you have a ratio here, but the way that this functions sort of is based off of the AMEK mastering compressor, the 8900, and that unit has some different things. It operates basically in two separate modes. If you're operating in a soft knee mode, then what happens is that the threshold basically is moving the curve of the knee lower, right? So you'll get more gain reduction as you go up, right? And the idea of the soft compression is that it would be increasing in ratio as the signal level goes higher, right? So you basically use this to scoop how far down you want to go into the RMS signal with the knee, And then the more it goes over, the higher the ratio. Will just somewhat like tape, the way that tape works. Although I think it's more contained in terms of, I don't think it'll brick wall out. Otherwise, if you enter into the ratio mode here, then you're in hardening mode, which goes all the way up from 1.1 to infinity to 1, right? So you basically get a brick wall compression or limiting at that point. And as you drive the threshold into that, you get, it acts more like a gain stage. So in a way, like normally you would think of like a threshold as you're moving the actual threshold from which the triggering occurs. But what actually happens here is you're driving input gain in through a fixed threshold. And then in combination with the ratio, you're getting your compression. So it's a little bit of that, and it's somewhat making up for the gain on the backstage. So has a similar effect, but that is basically what it is. The ambience button will allow you to hear the compression. So it will compare the compressed version to the input signal and give you the differential so you could hear that. And that sometimes is a helpful way of kind of tweaking that in. The timing is an unusual one as well. It's also affected by whether you're hard knee or soft knee. As you kind of use this, I'm sorry, let me kind of step back for a second. The timing, sorry, I'll take a step back here for this. The timing actually changes the detector window side, the RMS detector window. So if you've watched the video that I've done on the 8900 or the AMEK mastering compressor, essentially what this does is operates in a slightly different way. And in its essence, what it's doing as you go slower here, it's increasing the window, right? The RMS detection window, and you basically get a slower attack and release time. As you drive it up this way, what you get is a faster attack and release time. So it's compensating that way, kind of doing both. So rather than having separate attack and release settings, you're getting that. Then you have a makeup gain. You also have the makeup gain loss meter. So you're not just seeing gain reduction, you're seeing the whole gain, right? What the actual gain is, the gain movement. And so that's showing you the meter, and then where it's kind of going to, so you could use the makeup gain to kind of dial that, back into, some sort of unity center at the end. And then you have a mix wet dry control here for this. So that's just the compressor section. There's also a limiter section. Now the limiter section is actually after the EQ. So I think I misspoke about that. The limiter section here just has a threshold and a makeup gain on it. So essentially it's not really clipping. That's actually kind of what the VCA clip does. But it's just basically having a limiter on the backside for transient energy. And then you also have a wet dry control on it. The VCA clip, this is a clipping. It's basically in its 0 setting emulates the actual hardware clipping of the VCA. So if you drive more signal into it, it's the clipping characteristics that are there, and you have that. The sidechain, so these are all independent. So this is just all within the dynamic section. The sidechain link will link the sidechains for left and right. And this way, if you operate it, otherwise left-right would operate independently of each other. That links not just the compression and limiting, but also the expander gate section. EQ is pretty straightforward. It is a 5-band EQ. You got a main in and out switch here. You have individual out switches here. I keep wanting to hit the this thinking it's a button, but you actually hit that there. It actually gives you 2 shelving EQs and full parametrics. So you have your full normal range there. The mid frequency is just parametric. So you have that full parametric there, and then 2 shelving / parametric EQs on the bottom for the low end. Pretty straightforward. They've added in the gain scale knob, which is on a lot of BrainWorks plugins. That's also very cool if you want to kind of exaggerate the same basic settings. or dial them back a little bit. You could also invert it, and this will do the EQ backwards. So all of your boosts will become attenuations and vice versa. That way you can kind of get a little bit more sense. Sometimes it's actually helpful to kind of dial in what you're trying to get rid of. Basically, that's what you do when you boost to find the frequency that you're trying to get rid of and then notch it out or whatever. Auto listen just means when you grab a setting, it will solo up that band. So you'll hear the full range of the particular band that you grab onto, and it will add in, give you that soloing feature also on a lot of BrainWorks plugins, like the digital BX Digital V3 has that. There's the TMT, harmonic distortion, virtual gain, which is the noise. There's a mono maker in here. So the stereo width control, you have that. Output fader. And you could switch the mode from analog. This will just make it everything identical. This will give you some variation. You have up to 72 channel strips there, right? So you could dial that in. Phase inversion, mute, input gain, all of those. And then basically a balance control here of some sort here for stereo signals. Let's make a little noise because I think, going through this, all the basic settings here, I'm just going to run this through drums and probably focus a bit on the compression. But we'll start with a little bit of EQ here just to sort of sculpt this out a little bit. And then we'll dig into some of the compression, and I'll show you some of the cool things that you can do with that. Because that's really, to me, the EQ sounds amazing, but the compression sort of adds like another level, compression limiting and VCA clip. So let's start by scooping out maybe some boxiness here from the drums. Maybe dial in a little bit of something on a sharp cue for the kick drum, the low end. And then let me see, we'll just do something simple here. Just do a little shelf up on the top end here. Maybe start somewhere around 2K. That added like a nice height. I wasn't thinking about that, but let me just try and do what I was originally thinking to do right here. All right, so let's just start with that just as like a basic thing. Now, it's great because you can really sculpt with this without losing the integrity of the original sound, I mean, obviously you can make bad EQ decisions. That can happen anywhere, but it's pretty, really clean sounding. So if you're really looking to sculpt something without shifting or changing basic character of the original This is sort of the one that you want to use if you're not trying to, like, imbue a particular character. You're not really going to get that as much from this channel strip as you would, say, from like a Lindell, Neve console, 80 series or 50 series or something, which will have a lot more analog character in it. Let's see if we can do something with the compression here. Couple things. I could go, just to show you what this is all about here, let me just kind of go to a smash it kind of mode here for a second. And it's nice having that parallel in there so I can kind of smash it and sort of mix in that. Let's just do a little bit, I mean, as if that's not enough. Let's throw a little limiter on top of that. Right, so we can really change the character of it that way. You could get pretty aggressive and still kind of, and with all the grit and everything, really holds together. Doesn't collapse or fall apart on you. Let's go to the VCA clip. This doesn't have a gain makeup, which would be nice, but let's see what we can do with this here. Right, just to show you how you can kind of quickly just take something and mangle it. And you could also, go in and, do something a bit, like if I just kind of, let me take this off here for a second, take the, I'll leave the clip on there, let that kind of be normal, just to show you a little bit of the soft knee setting without necessarily being as aggressive with this. So even in a more subtle way to just kind of capture, a bit more movement or something that's a little bit more natural. And if you wanted to go something that's a little bit more aggressive with the compression, you could start to, let's just kind of dial in like a 2-to-1 even here and do it this way. The gain goes the opposite here. drier and more contained. Little bit of movement. And then obviously you can dive in, with more aggression. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the way that you can use it. And in that respect, I really love it. The fact that it's like a little bit modified down here and made a bit simpler here, just kind of working with the 3 knobs primarily here in the makeup gain. You can get used to it pretty quick, and having the parallel mix is really handy there. Using it on individual tracks, I'm just using it on a drum stem, just to kind of give you some shaping ideas about the way that you can work with it. In its essence, the threshold is basically acting, whatever it's doing under the hood, as you drive it up more, it's giving you more gain reduction. And then it's just a matter of, is it a soft knee? Is it a hard knee? How aggressive and how much of it do you want to mix in? And the timing is really just a matter of like how much pumping and breathing movement do you want, which is more so here, and more evening out or leveling here. So just that alone, there's a lot of cool things that you can, creative things that you can do with shaping and kind of gluing together an instrument, whether you do it aggressively or not. Got the limiter and the clipper on top of all of that. Gives you a lot to work with as a creative tool, and an interesting one to check out. Again, you could put it together with the individual plugins. I think having it kind of all here, I've always liked channel strips. Not everybody does, but I've always liked channel strips, just that ability to just kind of work within, and kind of have your EQ and compression all right there, and just dial it all in together is helpful to me, to my workflow. Maybe it is for yours too. All right, that's it. A pretty cool one. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but then as I picked it up and started playing around with it, I realized, this is a really cool tool that might be a good one for a lot of people. So I threw it out there for you to check out. Plugin of the week, Plugin Alliance. It's the BX Console AMEK 200, the channel strip you didn't know you wanted.